let's take a look at a new ham HT offering from Radioddity. Hi, and welcome to the Gadget Talk channel, where we do reviews and how-tos on a variety of electronic gadgets that catch my eye. If you find this video helpful, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel. I'll have product affiliate links below that will help support the channel. There have been a number of new releases in the budget price dual band HT market so far this year. In this video, we'll be taking a look at a new offering from Radioddity. I need to let you know that Radioddity reached out and offered one of these radios for me to review. As always, you're getting my honest opinion and they have no input into the video. When looking at the radio, you'll notice right away that it shares a lineage with BaoFeng UV-17 series radios. In fact, the insert in the charging cradle is labeled UV-19. I suspect that model is one that's made available to resellers for customization and private branding. The radio has the same general look and feel as the UV-17 with a similar set of menu functions and features. One notable difference is the round rocker style up and down button on the radio's faceplate. For those of you who like to cut right to the chase, here is a quick list of features that I find most appealing. First is the large color screen. The radio uses a white on black screen color scheme and a large modern font for the numbers. There's a color signal strength indicator and all the usual screen icons. Like most screens of this type, it can get a bit washed out in bright sunlight. In the shade of an awning or tree, it's still readable. Next are the very handy additional receive bands. A key press will switch the receiver to the FM broadcast mode or to the NOAA weather band. You can search either band for the station you want. You can also choose between a single receive channel and dual band receive. You could, for example, be having a QSO on a simplex frequency while monitoring activity on a local repeater, or vice versa. Last for this short list, the 999 channels are easily programmable from the radio faceplate or the freely downloadable CPS you can find on the Radioddity website. I find programming using the CPS is much easier, especially if you plan on adding a bunch of channels. If you don't have one, don't forget to add a programming cable to your order. When adding lots of channels, plan ahead to add those channels in groupings that make sense so you can quickly navigate through your channel list. Let's take a quick look at what you'll get with your GC-5 and do a tour of the radio. So here's the box that the GC-5 comes in. It's got its FCC ID number here and its model number on the back, just the usual stuff. So let's take a look at what you're going to find in the box. First, let's look at the user manual. It's labeled as the GC-5 series of radios. It's pretty typical of the manuals found for all of these little radios. Lists the main features, diagram of the buttons and what they do, icons for the various screen displays, and then it'll go through some of the programming for some of the primary functions, and then it finishes up with a list of the menu items that we'll take a look at here in just a second. Now, the charger that comes is a typical desk cradle. It's wired. It's typical of some of the more recent BaoFeng chargers, 120 volt plug here for the United States, and then it has a little insert here that you just snap in for the radio. Interestingly, it says UV19. So there's a history with this radio to some of the other series, and it's not unusual for manufacturers like BaoFeng to do custom manufacturing for other resellers, and so I think that's probably the case here with this Radioddity radio. So that's the charge. Here's the belt clip. Belt clip is pretty typical. It's got a pretty good spring on it, and the screws are mounted in the radio. So if you don't want it, you'll just keep the track of the screws by leaving them plugged into the radio. And if you want to add a belt clip, just take them out and insert the belt clip. As with many of these little radio, it comes with a wired earpiece and push-to-talk attachment. It's got the K1 connectors on it, so it fits into the side of the radio, so you can use the radio a little bit more discreetly if you want to leave it in a pack or clipped to your belt and still be able to hear and talk with the radio. This radio also comes with one of the antennas that's a little more skinny, a little narrower, and a little more flexible. These are similar to the Nagoya 771 series of antennas, and these seem to have become quite popular in the new low-cost radio market. It's got the SMA female or plug side here on the antenna, and then the frequency coverage of the antenna is printed in small letters on the little grommet that is inside the antenna down there. So that's the antenna. And so let's look at the radio here real quick. I'll do a quick power off tour. We've got the screen here, menu, back key, VFO, an MR key or memory key, and then the A and B key. So in this radio, they're separate keys as opposed to long presses on other keys. And then the other difference between this and some of the other newer radios that have hit the market recently is that this has got an up and down rocker circular kind of button instead of separate buttons for up and down. Speaker is behind. You can see the cuts in the case right there between the rows of numbers. And then, as with most of these radios, the rows of numbers have the alternate menu item printed on the key. So if you wanted to go into the menu and change how long the screen stays lit, you'd press menu 6 and you'd go right to that menu. And so you can cover 0 through 9. And we'll take a look at those when we get to the power on part of the tour. On this side of the radio, we've got the K1 connector and cover for that. Across the back, we've got the battery. I've got the battery installed. This one screws in, it doesn't snap in. And then underneath it, you've got the connectors in a metal tray where the battery sits along with the ID number and model number. Here are the screws for the belt clip. On this side, we've got 3 buttons. We've got the flashlight button up on top. We've got the push to talk, and then we've got side key 2, which is programmable. And right now, it's coming out of the box. Quick press will put it into the FM radio mode, and a long press will put it into the Moni or monitor mode, set the squelch to 0. The other thing you may notice, and this is, a $25, $26 radio, it does not come with a battery that has USB-C charging on it, and so that's something to be aware of, but certainly not a deal breaker, especially at this price point. At the top of the radio, we've got the antenna connector. This is the male or plug side of the SMA, and then we've got the flashlight and the on-off button. Now, let's get the antenna on and do a power on tour of the menus and other features. Let's put the antenna on. And then let's turn the radio on. And I'd like you to take a look at the screen when it first comes on, because that's going to be one of the neat features of the CPS that I'll talk about here in a minute.
Welcome. Frequency mode.
And so this display is really pretty nice. And you saw it had my call sign and a little icon. And with the CPS, you can upload your own picture to your power on screen, which is pretty cool. I've got my call sign and a little radio antenna, as you saw. But any bitmap picture that is 160 by 128, as I recall, can be uploaded to the radio. And then you can customize the screen with whatever information you would like to display when the radio powers on. So in this case, we've got VFO mode in both the upper and lower register. The little red icon or caret up there shows that the upper register is active. To go to the lower register, you press AB and move down there, move back up there. To go from the VFO to the channel mode, we just press the VFO MR key.
Channel mode.
You can see that the font changed, and I have a channel set up. This is the VHF call channel, and you can see then instead of saying VFO, it says channel 1. Now that's one of the drawbacks to this series of radios, the new firmware that you see in several radios associated with BaoFeng, and then certainly this one from Radioddity. It's got a really nice font on the screen, and it's white on black, which is also quite cool. Unfortunately, the letters on the top are not that same large size, and so if there was a wish list here in these radios that would change, that would be one for me, would be to use the same font family with that. On the other hand, there are about like 10 or 12 characters that you can put in there, and so that may be why they put the smaller font to squeeze those extra characters in, so that when you name your channels, you don't have to be quite so creative in terms of abbreviations. To change channels, you just simply move up and down. There's UHF call. You can see here that I've got a repeater. The plus shows up. I've got high power on that particular channel. And then also when you press the push to talk, you're going to get a power indicator across the bottom, and so that is also pretty handy to do. That's all customizable to you. You can do whatever you want. So let's take a quick look here at the menu system just very quickly. To get into menu, it works like all these little radios tend to do. Press the menu key. The menu comes up where the lower register was. You see it's menu 0. If I wanted to go to, say, menu 5, I could just press the number 5, and I would go then to menu 5. You can see it flashing there, wide and narrow. If I want to make a change, I can do that. Let's go to squelch. So I'll go to menu 0. I'm in squelch, and then I can press the up and down button. Press the menu, get it flashing down there, and then I can change my squelch. If I wanted to select it, I'd press menu again, and then I can go up or down and change the menu settings one at a time, or again, I can press the numbers. Now, I don't want squelch level 8, so I'm going to open that back up, and I'm going to go back to squelch 3, which tends to work for me here, and I'm going to exit the menu system by pressing the back key. Two other quick things to notice that are interesting about this radio. If you long press the back key, you get this search, and this will give you the opportunity to search for a nearby transmitter, and by that I mean fairly nearby, like in the same room. So if you had a buddy and you didn't know exactly what frequency and CTCSS or DCS code he was working with, and you didn't want to go through all the menu items, you could just have him key up with you in this mode, and if he was on UHF, it would search and then display his frequency and CTCSS code. The AB button can be used to change it to VHF, and then there's another setting, 200, not sure what that is, and then go back to UHF. And so then another quick press there on that button will take you out of the search mode. You can access the weather by a long press on key number 0.
0. On.
And thunderstorms. 4. Highs 99.
There's the weather channel for this part of the country.
20%.
Off.
Quick touch on the push to talk will take you out of that. And then a touch on the side key 2 over here
On. Off.
brings you to broadcast FM, and you can go through or type in frequencies as you need. I haven't been able to find a memory register to store FM channels, but maneuvering the FM band is pretty easy to do. And so now let's move on. The power output I got from my GC-5 was pretty typical for HTs in this price range. Here's a quick look. So we've got the GC-5 connected to the MFJ 874 power meter. We're on the low arc. We're in the VHF range on low power. Let's see what we have. About 0.6 watts. That's a little lower than what is often the case with these, but about 0.6 in VHF at the low power setting. Let's go up to high power. Looks to be about 3.4 watts, creeping up on 3.5 watts. That is pretty typical for radios in this price range, so that's right where I would expect it. And for those of you who care, I am broadcasting into a dummy load. Let's go up to the UHF range. So here in the UHF range, again, low power. Let's see what we get on that lower arc. About 0.8 watts on low power. On high, about 3 watts on high. So that's pretty typical. The lows are maybe a little lower than some other radios in this category. The highs are right in line with what you'd expect for a radio that's advertised as a 5-watt radio. You know, between 3 and 4.5 watts is pretty typical. So that's the power output here for this little GC-5. I talked with a fellow club member on the club repeater who said I sounded fine with just a bit of noise that was well below my voice level. I tuned into a morning net on that same repeater with my VHF base station and noticed that the noise was present there too, so I'm thinking that at least some of that might have been the repeater. In any case, here's a clip of both the transmit and receive audio.
GC-5, receive test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Test out. GC-5, transmit test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Test.
I mentioned earlier, I'm a big fan of using customer programming software, or CPS, when programming new radios. The provided CPS works well and has the Power on Picture import feature that's recently popped up on newer BaoFeng and BaoFeng related radios. Look for that in this following clip. Since this is a new offering, programming in Chirp is not yet available. So here is the Radioddity GC-5 CPS. Let's do just a quick overview. I've got the radio connected to the programming cable, and I've got the programming cable connected to my computer. I've looked on my device manager and it is on COM 3. So I'm going to expand this window a little bit. I'm going to go here and I'm going to go to settings. I'm going to go to port. I'm going to click in there. I'm going to COM 3 so it knows where to talk to the radio. And then I am going to read. Now, before I do that read, let me just give you just a quick overview of the top menu settings. So here we've got File, New, Open, Save, Windows. It gives me a chance to open my channel, VFO, function, or DTMF programs. We'll look at those. Here's Read Write, the same as the icons. Settings we just looked at. Tools is our Power on Picture, and I mentioned that in my review. You have to set the COM port again, and then you can click Open Image and pick any bitmap image that's 160 by 128 and import it to be the power on screen on your radio, which is pretty cool. So let's read from the radio. I have already done some programming with this as I've been using the radio. So we'll read, and here we go. The read is finished. And so here you can see the channels that I've programmed in, and I've programmed in about 25, 27 channels. Now these are just, basic ham channels. You have the name over here, and you have quite a few characters, as I've already mentioned. And so here to just start, you can click in a frequency. It'll fill in the rest of this information except for the name. If you need to change the transmit frequency, in other words, it's a repeater, you would type in the repeater's input frequency here. The input CT CSS is labeled as transmit, and that's transmit on your radio. If the receiver has an output CT CSS, you would program it here in this column for the receive. Most repeaters don't, but occasionally, as you see in this list, that they will. You can add it or subtract it from your scan list. PTTID signaling is not something that normally is used for the typical ham operations. And so we've got all this. This is the frequency hopping. We've got that off. And so we don't want to be messing with multiple CT, CSS tones and whatever else in terms of encryption that some of these radios have, as encryption is not allowed in the amateur band. So that's how we've got all these done. It's really pretty easy to do. We can also go into our VFO mode. And so here, VFO-A I have starting at 147. VFO-B is going to open up at 146. And these various settings are there. Of course, you can key in any frequency into either the VFO-A or VFO-B that you would like. Back here, we've got our function menu, and this is a bunch of the radio menu items that you can set easily here using drop down. So I've got my squelch 3, timeout timer, power save mode. Over here, I've got the alarm tone set to on, but I've got it set to on-site so it only sounds on the radio, doesn't broadcast. My scan mode is time operation. In type display A, I've got name, as I've shown you already. In display B, I've got frequency, and those are changeable. You can change them to anything you'd like. And so these are the various menu items that you can make adjustments to. And then here we can make changes to our DTMF codes. I don't use DTMF very often, so I just leave this alone. When we're done, we can write to the radio. So we press write, start, and now it writes to the radio. The radio shows a programming icon. It rebooted, and now it's ready to go. Now what I normally do then is click File, Save As, and give my new code plug a name. I usually name it the year, the month, and the date, and then the model number. So 2023-08-17 GC-5. And so if I have to go back and do a replacement, something gets messed up, I can use that code plug, and I'll save it someplace on my computer where I have easy access to it. So that's our overview of the GC-5 CPS. It is downloadable from Radioddity. I really like the form factor and styling of the GC-5. It has a solid feel and enough weight to make it easy to hold and manipulate without fear of dropping it or otherwise losing control of the device. The extra characters available when naming channels are also nice, but I think I'd prefer fewer characters with the same big font style as the numbers. In any case, the screen is easy to read in all but the brightest sunshine. The wireless frequency copy is also an interesting feature. When searching for the nearby radio signal, you can save it by pressing the menu key. This is not the same as wireless cloning, though. This is a one channel at a time activity. You need to keep in mind that this is a budget, or what I call a price point radio. The Radioddity GC-5 has lots of great features and is certainly more capable than radios at this price point just a few years ago. One of the big advantages to these inexpensive HTs is that they are an easy way into the hobby for the technician class operator who just got his or her license. They're also really good for more experienced hams who want an inexpensive yet capable radio for a go bag or for when heading out camping or hiking where there's a risk of loss or damage. While you'd be sad if you lost or damaged a $25 radio, it's definitely not the same thing as coming home without your $500 top-of-the-line HT. Just saying. Join me over here to learn more about another Radioddity HT that comes in at about $100. You'll be able to see the differences when you have a bit more to invest in a new analog HT. As always, feel free to leave a comment, and thanks for watching.